I let my daughter buy expensive things with her own money, and my sister-in-law called her a spoiled brat. My daughter Sophie just turned 22, and she's been working since she was 16 years old. She has a part-time job at this marketing firm while she goes to university, and she even insists on giving us money every month to help with bills. We're incredibly proud of how independent she is. 2 years ago, she saved up and bought herself a new iPad because her old tablet kept crashing during her online classes. She also bought this really nice leather tote from Coach that she uses for her internship. Everything she buys comes from her own paycheck. 2 months ago, we went on this family vacation with my brother and his wife and their 2 kids, Ashley and Ryan. They're around the same age as Sophie, but they don't work. My brother still pays for everything they do, which is fine. That's his choice. But the whole trip, Sophie was being incredibly generous. She'd buy drinks for all 3 of them, pay for their snacks, stuff like that. One day, we all went shopping, and Sophie picked up a few things for herself and some gifts for her friends back home, normal stuff. That night at dinner, my sister-in-law completely turned on her. Right in front of everyone at the restaurant, she told me and my husband that we were spoiling Sophie too much. I was confused and said that Sophie earned every dollar herself. That's when my sister-in-law looked straight at Sophie and said she shouldn't be flaunting her purchases in front of her cousins who don't have a comfortable corporate position. Then she said, "You've spoiled Sophie into the person she is." Sophie's face went red, and she apologized quietly. I could tell she was about to cry. My husband stood up and said Sophie had nothing to apologize for. She worked hard for everything she had. I backed him up and pointed out that Sophie has been financially independent since she was 16. That's when my sister-in-law called Sophie a brat, said all this money had turned her into someone who didn't know how to manage finances. Sophie excused herself to the restroom but texted us a few minutes later that she'd gone back to the hotel. We argued with my brother and his wife for another 90 minutes while our food got cold. When we got back to the hotel, we found Sophie crying her eyes out in her room. She kept saying she didn't mean to show off and asking if she should have left her nice tote at home. It broke my heart seeing her so upset over something she'd worked so hard for. I called my brother hoping he'd talk some sense into his wife. That's when he admitted the real problem. Apparently, Ashley had been crying to them for days about wanting everything Sophie had. She saw Sophie's iPad and demanded they buy her one too. When they said no, she threw a fit and kept complaining about how unfair it was. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening after my brother finished explaining. "So, because you can't say no to your own daughter's jealousy, you let your wife attack mine at a public dinner table?" My brother sighed, that tired, defeated sound he always makes when he's stuck between his family and his wife's temper. "Look, it's just a lot of pressure, okay? Ashley sees Sophie buying all this stuff, and she doesn't understand why she can't have it too." Disgusted. Truly disgusted. Sophie didn't ask for a comfortable corporate position. She spent her summers working 40-hour weeks while Ashley was at the lake. She skipped parties to finish freelance projects. She earned her seat at that table, and she shouldn't have to dim her light just because her cousin refuses to strike a match. I hung up on him and went back into Sophie's room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her Coach tote sitting on the floor like a piece of evidence. She looked at it with such a mix of shame and sadness that I wanted to scream. "Sophie, listen to me," I said, sitting beside her and taking her hands. They were cold. "You didn't do anything wrong. Ashley's jealousy is her problem, not your responsibility. You worked for that bag. You worked for that iPad. When you bought drinks for them yesterday, was that being a spoiled brat?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I just wanted everyone to have a good time. I thought it was nice to share, but Aunt Sarah made it sound like I was rubbing it in their faces, like I think I'm better than them." "You don't think you're better than them?" I countered. "But you times are times more responsible, and that's what's bothering them. They're looking at your independence, and it's acting like a mirror for their own kids' lack of it." The rest of the vacation was a disaster. We didn't speak to my brother or Sarah for the remaining 48 hours. We took our meals separately. I saw Ashley at the hotel pool one afternoon. She was lounging with a cocktail her father had clearly paid for, scrolling through her phone with a sour expression. She didn't even look at me. The entitlement was a physical aura around her. When we finally got home, the atmosphere didn't immediately lighten. Sophie started leaving her nice things in her room. She went back to using an old, beat-up backpack for her internship. It was like she was trying to shrink herself to fit into the small-minded box her aunt had built for her. I watched this for a week before I'd had enough. One morning, as she was heading out the door, I blocked her path. "Where's your tote?" I asked. She looked down at the floor. "The backpack is fine, Mom. It holds everything. I don't want people at the office thinking I'm, a brat? Someone who manages their money well? Sophie, you are an adult. You are a professional. That bag was a reward for your hard work. You're telling yourself that your success is something to be ashamed of." She bit her lip. "The wrong people are getting mad for the wrong reasons," I said firmly. "Go get your bag and use your iPad in class. You bought those tools to help you succeed. Don't sabotage your own career because your cousins are stuck in neutral." She stayed quiet for a long beat, then turned around and went back to her room. When she came out, she was carrying the leather tote. She looked terrified, but she held the handles tight. 2 weeks later, my brother called again. He sounded sheepish. "Sarah wants to apologize," he said, "but she thinks Sophie should also apologize for the misunderstanding." I almost laughed. There was no misunderstanding. Sarah insulted my daughter to her face because she couldn't handle your own daughter's tantrum. There will be no apology from Sophie. And until Sarah can acknowledge exactly what she did, we won't be attending the family reunion next month. The fallout was massive. My mother called me, crying about family unity. My other siblings took sides, but I didn't care. I watched Sophie come home that evening, her head held a little higher. She told me she'd landed a promotion at the firm, a junior associate role that would start the Monday after graduation. "I told Ashley," she said, sitting at the kitchen table. My heart sank. "And?" She asked if I could get her a job too. I told her I'd be happy to send her the link to the careers page and give her some tips on her resume. She got annoyed and hung up. Sophie shrugged, and for the first time, she didn't look like she was about to cry. She looked at peace. "I realized I can't pay for her happiness, Mom. I can only pay for my own." I hugged her tight. My daughter isn't spoiled. She's seasoned. She knows the value of a dollar because she knows the weight of the hours it takes to earn one. If the rest of the family wants to call that being a brat, then they can say it to the back of her expensive, hard-earned leather tote as she walks right past them toward her future. Would you like me to describe the confrontation at the family reunion if they decide to go? Or perhaps focus on Sophie's first day in her new corporate role? The fallout from the vacation didn't just stay in that hotel room. It bled into the family group chat like ink on a white rug. My brother kept trying to play peacemaker, but his version of peace was really just asking us to be quiet so Sarah didn't have to feel guilty. He sent a message saying, "We're all family. Let's just move past the labels," to which my husband replied, "The label was spoiled brat, and your wife was the one holding the label maker." A week before graduation, Sophie got her first real paycheck from her new associate position. It was more than she'd ever made in a month at her part-time job. I watched her sit at the kitchen table with her laptop, her face illuminated by the glow of a spreadsheet. She wasn't looking at shoes or jewelry. She was calculating how much she could put into her high-yield savings savings account and looking at a professional development course she wanted to take. Mom, she said, looking up, I want to take you and Dad out for a really nice dinner. No budget, just the three of us. Sophie, you don't have to. I want to, she insisted, her voice firm. Because you guys supported me when Aunt Sarah tried to make me feel small. I want to celebrate that I didn't listen to her. We went to a high-end steakhouse in the city. Sophie looked incredible. She wore a simple, elegant dress and, yes, she carried that Coach tote. We were halfway through our appetizers when I saw a familiar face across the dining room. It was Sarah and Ashley. They were sitting with a group of women, likely Sarah's friends from her bridge club. The air in my lungs sharpened. I saw the moment Sarah noticed us. She leaned in, whispering to her friends, her eyes darting towards Sophie's bag on the chair next to her. Ashley looked bored, picking at a salad, her eyes glued to her phone. Don't look, I whispered to Sophie. I already saw them, Mom, Sophie said, taking a sip of her water. She didn't flush red this time. She didn't look like she wanted to cry. It's okay. As we were finishing our main course, Sarah stood up and walked toward our table. She had that forced, tight-lipped smile that usually preceded a passive-aggressive comment. Well, look at the high rollers, Sarah said, her voice loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. I see the corporate position is paying off. Is this another lesson in how to spend money before you've even turned 23? My husband started to stand up, but Sophie put a hand on his arm. She looked up at her aunt, her expression completely neutral. Actually, Aunt Sarah, I'm celebrating a promotion, Sophie said calmly, and I'm paying for my parents' dinner because they taught me the value of hard work and gratitude. It's a shame you couldn't join us, but I imagine you're busy helping Ashley with her applications. Sarah's face went from pale to a blotchy, angry crimson. You think you're so much better than us because you have a fancy title and a leather bag. You're still just a kid who doesn't know the first thing about the real world. The real world is where I spend 40 hours a week, Aunt Sarah, Sophie replied, her voice steady and professional. The real world is where I pay my own taxes and my own car insurance. If that makes me a brat in your eyes, I can live with that, but I'm done apologizing for being successful. Sarah sputtered, looking for a comeback, but found nothing. She turned on her heel and marched back to her table. Ashley didn't even look up from her phone. The rest of the dinner was quiet, but it was a good quiet. When the bill came, Sophie didn't hesitate. She swiped her card, signed the tip with a flourish, and stood up. As we walked out, we passed Sarah's table. Sophie didn't look over. She didn't flaunt. She just walked with the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was. Outside, the city air was cool. Sophie took a deep breath. I think I finally understand, she said. Understand what, honey? I asked. Aunt Sarah isn't mad at me, Sophie said. She's mad at the version of Ashley that doesn't exist. She's mad that she can't buy Ashley the drive or the ambition I have, and she's taking it out on the only person she can see who has it. She was right. The spoiled label was never about Sophie's money. It was about Sarah's failure to raise a daughter who knew how to stand on her own 2 feet. So proud of her. Not because of the job or the bag, but because she finally stopped asking for permission to be great. Would you like me to describe Sophie's graduation day? Or perhaps a follow-up where Ashley finally reaches out for genuine help?